Welcome back to Under Baobab Skies. Tonight we have a special treat. In the vibrant heart of Central Africa lies a tale so intricately carved into existence it seems almost sacrilegious to touch. Tonight we travel to the lands of the Bakongo people, where the forests stretch deep and alive. Here the air is thick with the hum of insects and the chatter of birds, and in the stillness one might swear they can hear the quiet pulse of drums carried on the air. It is here, in the dappled light of the forest and the smoky glow of firelit workshops, that the woodcarver's blade kisses the grain of sacred trees. The wood bleeds sap, the carver bleeds sweat, each stroke shaping not just wood, but stories, shaping figures that are not simply objects, but vessels of power, guardians of healing, and sometimes gateways to the spirit world itself. To understand this art form is to understand a life lived in harmony with nature, with ancestors, and with spirits. A life where every tree holds a story, every river a spirit, and every carve a prayer. In the heart of the Congo rainforest, the Bakongo people have thrived for centuries, their lives intertwined with the ancient trees and the spirits that dwell within them. For the Bakongo, the forest is not just a backdrop, it is a living, breathing entity, a source of sustenance, medicine, and magic. It is here, in the emerald embrace of the jungle, that their traditions took root, traditions that saw every tree as a potential vessel, every piece of wood as a sleeping spirit, just waiting for the right hands to awaken it. And so the carver is not just an artist, he is a conduit, a translator between the raw energies of the forest and the spiritual needs of his people. His tools are not just chisels and knives, they are extensions of his soul. With each cut, he channels respect, fear, and reverence for the spirits that reside in the wood. But being a carver is no easy feat. It is a calling, a responsibility, and at times a dangerous undertaking. The carver's life is marked by long days of aching muscles, the bite of biting insects, and the constant threat of injury from the razor-sharp tools that shape the wood. He works not just with his hands, but with his entire body, his every sense alert for any misstep that could lead to disaster. Yet the carvers do not falter. They work with a focus born from generations of tradition, their movements fluid, their cuts precise, their sweat a testament to their dedication. The tools they use are as varied as the figures they create, from the sharpest of knives to the most durable of axes. Each has its purpose. The selection is not random, it is a ritual in itself, a communion with the tools that will become extensions of their will. Once the tools are chosen, the work begins. The wood, often from sacred trees, is set up in the carved space. Incantations are whispered, prayers are spoken, and the carver asks for the spirit's blessing. This is not just a job, it's a partnership. The carver is inviting the spirit of the tree to work through him, to be shaped by him, to be shared by him. As the blade sinks into the wood, the carver becomes one with the figure he is creating. It is a dance of give and take, of strength and finesse, of respect and transformation. The wood yields, it bleeds, sap, it sighs. The carver perspires, he sings, he chants, he becomes the figure, but the danger is ever present. For the carver, the line between creation and destruction is thin. One slip of the knife, one miscalculation, and the spirit of the tree could turn, the blade could twist, and the carver would be no match for the wood's raw power. It is a dangerous dance, a test of skill and devotion, a gamble with the spirits. And yet the carvers do not shy away. They enter into this pact with the full knowledge of the risks, driven by a need to serve their community, to honor their traditions, to connect with their ancestors. For the Bakongo, carving is more than an art form. It is a way of life. Each figure crafted is not just a piece of art, it is a story, a prayer, a legacy. It is a testament to the human spirit's ability to shape the world around it, to transform wood into wonder, and to channel the power of the forest through the language of art. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. If you find yourself captivated by this tale and eager to explore more, know that your journey doesn't have to end here. The stories of the Congo, with its rich tapestry of cultures, beliefs, and art forms, are waiting to be discovered. And who knows, perhaps your path will lead you to more tales of courage, creativity, and connection with the world around us. Keep listening to Under Baobab Skies, because every episode is a new adventure under the eternal canopy of African skies. Until next time, may your days be filled with sunshine and your nights with starlight. And remember, the greatest adventures are often found where the wild things are. You are now under Baobab Skies, in the heart of the Congo rainforest, where the canopy seals out the sun's embrace and the air hums with the secrets of the ancient world. There existed a brotherhood of men whose lives were intertwined with the heartbeat of the forest. These were the Bakongo people, renowned not just for their deep connection with nature, but for their mastery over wood. Their lives revolved around the rhythm of the trees, their rituals echoing the whispers of the wind through the leaves. Amongst them lived a master woodcarver, his name echoing the strength and resilience of the mighty mahogany tree. His days began before the first blush of dawn, when the mist still hugged the riverbanks and the forest floor was wet with dew. The sky was a canvas of indigo, waiting for the sun to paint its masterpiece across the heavens. But Ubati, the carver, was already awake, his hut a silhouette against the soft glow of twilight. With calloused hands that told tales of countless carvings, he would grip his tools. Knives as sharp as the gaze of a hawk, adzes honed to the precision of a surgeon, chisels and rough blades sharpened over and over until their edges became extensions of his will. Each tool had its song, its rhythm, its language, and Ibu knew them all. He spoke to them as one would to old friends, whispering words of respect and understanding. His day began with preparation, a ritual as ingrained in him as breathing. The forest provided, and he was its humble servant. First, he would select his wood, feeling its essence, listening to its story, for each tree had one. Some were strong and silent, like the ironwood, while others seemed to hum with a restless energy, like the whistling thorn. Today, he chose a log of silky smooth mahogany, its heart whispering tales of enduring strength. The clearing was his sanctuary, a place where the spirits of the trees felt closest. Sunlight dappled through the canopy, painting intricate patterns on the ground. Birds sang their sweet hymns, and the air thrummed with the drone of cicadas. Here, away from the prying eyes of the world, Ubati began his transformation. The initial cuts were the most crucial, demanding not only skill, but a deep communion with the wood. As the first furrows appeared, so did the spirit of the tree. At first, it was a whisper, a faint tremor in the air, but soon it grew, taking shape in the hollows and curves of the emerging form. By the time the final stroke was made, the spirit was fully embodied, ready to step out of the wood and into the world. But carving was not a gentle art. It demanded bending over heavy logs for hours, steady hands that resisted the pull of fatigue, and a body that could withstand the relentless ache of repetition. The wood itself, often iron-hard from the dense forests of the Congo Basin, fought back with every strike. Each line cut into the surface was a negotiation between the will of the carver and the stubbornness of the tree. The tools bit deep, their edges biting into the fibers and grains of the wood, forcing Ubati to lean into the task. Sweat gathered on his brow, mingling with sawdust that floated in the air like memories. Each drop was a testament to his focus, each bead of perspiration a symbol of his dedication. And then there was the danger. The blade could slip at any moment, slicing skin, severing tendons, or leaving wounds that festered in the humid air. Without access to modern medicine, even a small cut could become a life-threatening infection. The carver's hands were his livelihood, and yet they were constantly under siege from the very tools that made him valuable. Despite the danger and the sweat, the carver found solace in the rhythm of his labor. The forest provided the raw material, the trees themselves offering their bodies to be shaped into forms, both mundane and otherworldly. Carving for him was more than a craft. It was a conversation with the spirits of the trees. He was merely their mouthpiece, giving form to what the spirits desired. As the sun climbed higher, the forest grew livelier. Monkeys chattered in the trees, their calls echoing the chatter of gossip. Birds of vibrant plumage perched on branches, their feathers like splashes of color on a painter's palette. And as the light shifted, the forest transformed, the same trees taking on new shapes, new identities. The air shimmered with life, and the carver was in his element. But the quiet of the clearing was not absolute. Sometimes the rhythmic tap of a woodpecker echoed through the trees. Sometimes the buzzing of a lone bee broke the stillness, or the rustle of leaves betrayed the presence of a curious monkey. These sounds, though subtle, were part of the carver's symphony. They were reminders of the living world that thrived around him. As the day wore on, the form began to take shape, emerging from the rough-hewn wood like a shy maiden unveiling herself to the world. With each stroke, the spirit within the wood grew stronger, eager to break free and dance in the sunlight. The carver felt their presence in the wood, guiding his hand, urging him to move faster, to be bolder. By midday, the heat was at its peak. The sun blazed in the cloudless sky, turning the forest into a steamy sauna. The air, thick and heavy, clung to the trees and the carver alike. But your beauty pressed on. He wiped the sweat from his brow, not allowing fatigue to slow his movements. For he knew that the spirits of the trees had no patience for sloth. As the afternoon wore on, the light began to soften, the harsh glare of midday yielding to a gentler warmth. The trees, bathed in the golden glow, seemed to sigh in contentment. The carver, too, felt the shift in energy, and he took a moment to rest, not from exhaustion, but from the intensity of his focus. In this quiet interlude, he would sharpen his tools, each stroke of the sharpening stone a meditative rhythm, a calming mantra in the symphony of the forest. As the tools sang their sharp song, the carver's thoughts drifted. He thought of the spirits of the trees, of the forms he had created in the past, and of the ones he would bring to life in the days to come. When the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the clearing, the carver's pace quickened. There was a sense of urgency now, a desire to finish before the day slipped into night. The forms he was creating were not just pieces of wood, they were vessels of power, and they needed to be completed under the watchful eye of the day. As the last rays of sunlight filtered through the trees, the carver stood up, stretching his aching muscles. He looked at his work, his heart swelling with pride. The forms were complete, and as the forest grew dark, they seemed to glow with an inner light. As darkness fell, the forest came alive with nocturnal sounds. The chirping of crickets replaced the birdsong, and the hoot of an owl echoed through the trees. The clearing, once filled with the sounds of carving, now embraced the quiet of the night. Yet for some Bakongo men, the work was not done. For those who carved for rituals or ceremonies, the night was often filled with the urgent demands of their craft. In the flickering lamplight, the wood took on a different character. Shadows danced across the wood, and the risk of error grew sharper. One mistake, one poorly placed strike, could ruin days of labor and disgrace the carver before his peers. There were times when Ubati worked through the night. The soft glow of oil lamps hanging from forked branches illuminated his workspace, casting dancing shadows that mimicked the spirits playing across the wood. Each stroke was deliberate, precise, etched with a lifetime of experience and respect for the materials. In these moments, the forest held its breath. The owls hooted softly, as if in reverence, and the crickets hushed their nightly chorus. Even the wind seemed to wait, holding its breath until dawn. The air itself was an enemy, not just the oppressive heat and humidity, but the fine dust created by the carving. It hung heavy in the air, coating his lungs and throat with grit. It was a silent assault on his body, a constant reminder of the toll his craft took on him. Add to that the strain of carrying logs from the forest, often more than one man could carry, and you find that the life of a woodcarver was as punishing as that of a fisherman or a farmer. Yet, despite the strain, there was no room for complaints. A carver's skill was measured not only by his craft, but by his endurance. To falter was to lose commissions, to lose status, and to disappoint those who saw the carver's work not as decoration, but as a shield between the living and the unseen world. And so Ubati endured. He carved not just with his hands, but with his heart and soul. His every movement was a prayer, a hymn to the spirits of the forest, a testament to the endurance of the human spirit. In the end, it is important to remember that the life of a Bakongo woodcarver was not just about hardship and endurance. It was also about creation, about bringing beauty and power into the world through the medium of wood. Each finished piece was a source of pride, a tangible link between the spiritual and physical realms. It was a collaboration between man and nature, between the living and the dead, a celebration of life in the heart of the African rainforest. The life of a Bakongo woodcarver was never only about steady hands or a sharp blade. Each cut into the wood carried the weight of ritual obligation, a contract with forces both seen and unseen. Before the first chip of bark was removed, the tree itself was chosen with care, not just for its strength or grain, but for its spirit. Certain woods were believed to host ancestral energies. Others had reputations for healing, protection, or danger. And so, before an axe touched bark, offerings were left, libations poured, and words whispered. To carve without ritual was to court disaster. The carver's workshop was not a neutral space. It was a place charged with invisible tension. Carvers were expected to remain ritually pure, avoiding certain foods, abstaining from intimacy, and staying away from conflict before beginning work. These obligations stretched on for days, even weeks. Breaking a single rule could be blamed for cracks in the wood, accidents with tools, or, more dangerously, for the failure of the final object to work. A carver lived with the constant knowledge that any misstep could be marked as careless, untrustworthy, or even dangerous. And then there was the poison of the workshop. Sometimes literal, sometimes symbolic. Carvers inhaled fine wood dust that could scar the lungs. Resin and sap stuck to their fingers, some of it toxic if it entered cuts. A slip of the blade might not heal cleanly in a world without antiseptic, infections spreading quickly in the humid air. Yet poison was also spiritual. Rivals might place charms or hexes near the carving site, hidden in shavings to curse the carver's work. A poorly performing enkizi was never the fault of the spirits alone. Suspicion could fall on the carver, and accusations of poisoning the work were enough to ruin or even end a life. In this crucible of physical and spiritual peril, the Bakongo woodcarver forged objects imbued with power, their very survival a testament to the potency of the spiritual world they inhabited. From the earliest dawn, the Bakongo man has lived in a world where spirits are not merely tales told to soothe the night, but presences that color every waking moment. The forest whispers with their energy, each tree a potential vessel, each riverbank a place of power. Even the bustling city holds echoes of the unseen, and the humble act of carving wood becomes a conversation with these forces beyond our sight. It is not just skill or creativity that brings an NKC to life. It is a delicate dance with spirits, a negotiation between worlds. The carver steps into this realm with respect and caution, aware that each stroke of his tool could open doors best left unopened. Our story begins long before the first chip of bark. It begins with the selection of the tree itself. A casual observer might see just wood, but the Bakongo eye sees potential, feels the hum of energy within. A sturdy tree, yes, but is its spirit gentle or fierce? Does its energy resonate with the purpose of the NKC? For the Bakongo, a tree is more than cellulose and lignin. It's a vessel of vital essence, a conduit to the spirit realm. Choosing the right tree is not just about aesthetics or function, it's about compatibility with the unseen world. The choice made, the tree is treated not just with reverence, but with practical understanding. Rituals vary, but the core elements remain: a libation to announce the coming work, a request for the spirit's cooperation, and an offering of tobacco leaves, the universal language of the bush. This is not appeasement, but engagement, a way of ensuring that the spirit's energy flows smoothly into the new form. But, as the work commences, the carver does not exist in a vacuum. The very air around him vibrates with unseen energies. Every swing of the machete, every scrape of the knife resonates with the spiritual world. The forest is alive, and the carver is acutely aware of the audience for his work. As the transformation of the NKC nears completion, the energy in the workshop intensifies. It is not just the anticipation of the physical form, but the knowledge that the spirit is being drawn into the wood. In this charged atmosphere, the carver must remain vigilant. His own energy must be in balance, for he is not just shaping wood, he is shaping the conduit between realms. This is not mere craftsmanship. It is high-stakes interaction with the spiritual world, and the stakes are high. A poorly executed ritual can lead to an imbalanced NKC, one that draws in malevolent spirits, or worse, rejects the intended occupant altogether. The carver's reputation, his very safety, hangs in the balance. But it is not just the spirits that demand respect. The process itself carries inherent dangers. The tools of the trade are not just instruments of creation, they are extensions of the carver's will, channeling his energy into the wood. But they are also agents of the physical world, capable of inflicting damage in the hands of a careless wielder. The rhythm of the forest is all around. The buzz of insects, the chatter of birds, the murmur of the wind through the trees. And then there is the music of the bush, the resonant pulse of drums, echoing ancient rhythms. But in this symphony of sound, there is another, more subtle melody, the song of the spirits. It is faint, almost imperceptible, yet the Bakongo ear is attuned to it. The carver listens not just with his ears, but with his whole being. For the song of the spirits is not just auditory, it is spiritual. As the work progresses, he may hear whispers in the rustle of leaves, warnings in the screech of a bird. And if he is truly gifted, he may hear the song of the spirit itself, guiding his hand, telling him when he is off balance. In this delicate dance between worlds, the carver relies not just on his senses, but on intuition, on a deep connection to the natural world that transcends the physical. He is not just an artist, he is a conduit, and the forest is his collaborator. But the spirits are not the only presences in the workshop. The ancestors are here too, watching, waiting, their presence a comforting weight on the carver's shoulders. They are the source of his knowledge, the reason for his craft, and as he works, he keeps them in mind, asking for their guidance, acknowledging their presence. To the Bakongo, carving is more than a profession. It is a duty, a way of honoring the ancestors, of keeping their memory alive. And in the rhythmic pulse of the forest, the carver finds a connection to those who came before. A continuity that binds him to generations past and future. As the sun climbs higher, the work continues, layer upon layer of meaning infused into the wood. But the carver does not just create an object. He navigates a world where every action has a reaction, every cut a consequence. He is not just an artist, he is a shaman of sorts, bridging the worlds of the seen and the unseen. And when the final touch is added, when the Nkisi is complete, it is not just an object. Placed in the forest, it is a being sent into the world, carrying with it the hopes, fears, and beliefs of a people. In the heart of the Congo forest, where the air is thick with humidity and the earth thrums with unseen energy, there exists a tradition that transforms wood into more than just art. It becomes vessels of power, conduits between realms, and sometimes a stage for the battle between good and evil. In this mystical world, the Bakongo woodcarver steps into a legacy older than he is. His craft is not just about skill, it is about ritual, about an intricate dance with spirits, ancestors, and the very essence of the forest. His tools are more than instruments. They are extensions of his will and his senses, finely tuned to the whispers of the bush. He is a storyteller, a shaman, an artist. He is the keeper of a tradition that has survived for generations, and in each Nkisi he creates, he keeps that story alive. The Bakongo people of Central Africa have been making sculptures for hundreds of years. They carve figures called Nkisi, which are believed to house the spirits of their ancestors. But the story of how those statues come to life is more dangerous than you might expect. In fact, you could say that these carvings walk so that the sculptor can eat. Because, among the Bakongo, the woodcarver's hand was trusted to shape more than just beauty. Each stroke carried power, and each mistake could ripple outward like a stone tossed into a river. Carving was not just an act of craft, it was an act of mediation between humans, ancestors, and spirits. A careless detail could turn a sacred Nkasi into a dangerous vessel, drawing misfortune instead of protection. And in such a world, the carver himself bore the blame. We'll get back to our story in a minute, but first, a quick word from this episode. Every week they send me a box full of treats, and this month it's all about feeling good, which feels pretty fitting given how tense our story is. There are two kinds of tea, each designed to help you relax and distress. There's calm, a blend of citrus and herbs that helps you wind down after a long day, perfect for sipping as you watch the sunset. And then there's Restore, a mix of spices and botanicals designed to support your immune system so you can feel your best. I like to enjoy mine warm in the morning before starting my day. And speaking of feeling your best, alright, let's get back to the story. Among the Bakongo, mistakes weren't just human slips. They were spiritual crimes. Let's go back to the beginning. When a chief or priest or healer needed a new statue, he would summon a carver. It was not a job you chose, you were chosen. And when you were summoned, you couldn't say no. Refusing was seen as refusing the Nkasi, and that meant refusing the ancestors, and that could bring ruin to your family. So the carver would arrive at the patron's palace and receive his assignment. He might be given a sketch, a rough model made of clay, or even just a verbal description of the figure he was to make. All he knew for sure was that this statue was going to be important. It would embody a spirit, mediate between the physical world and the world of the dead. But then the carver would step into the forest and find his own tree. He would fell it, hew it, shape it, and slowly under the canopy of leaves, he would fashion the Nkezi. Here, too, there were rules. Only certain trees could be used. The wood had to be seasoned just so, and each cut demanded respect for the grain. Otherwise, the statue would be cursed, and so would the carver. After that came the hardest part, imbuing the statue with power. This was done through scarification, a process of hammering iron nails into the figure. Iron was believed to capture lightning, to hold the power of storms within it. And so, by driving nails into the statue, the carver was literally loading it with magic. Each nail had to be placed just so, and the hammer blows carefully measured. Too much force and the figure would shatter. Too little and the magic wouldn't hold. And what was most dangerous of all, mistakes were not just possible, they were expected. Tools would slip, hammers would glance off their marks, chisels would gouge too deep. And every error mattered because every line, every curve, every angle had a meaning. It was a visual language. The eyes of a figure could not be too narrow, nor too wide, lest they suggest weakness or rage. The stance of the body had to balance strength with humility. If a single mark was carved out of proportion, whispers could begin. The carver insulted the ancestors. The carver mocked the spirit. What began as rumor could end in exile, or worse. In a society where belief was reality, errors were not tolerated as human slips. They were interpreted as spiritual crimes. It was a lot of pressure. So, after each day's work, the carver would retreat to his own shrine to pray. He would humble himself before the ancestors, asking forgiveness for his failings and hoping for guidance for the morrow. His success depended on it, as well as the success of everyone around him. Because in a world without modern medicine, where every day could bring a violent confrontation with a rival tribe, where illness could ravage a village, where even a small child could be killed in a hunting accident, the Nkezi were vital. They provided protection, healing, and counsel. And now they were about to become even more important. See, the Bakongo were about to encounter the Portuguese, and the missionaries that came with them wanted the islanders to abandon their old beliefs and convert to Christianity. And so the stakes were higher than ever. The figures the carvers created were no longer just mediating between the physical and spiritual worlds. They were holding back the tide of cultural change itself. If the Nkezi failed to protect a chief in battle, if a healer's charm failed to cure a patient, suspicion would turn first to the carver. Was he careless? Was he corrupted by rivals? Did he accept a bribe to weaken the figure? Such accusations could be fatal. Carvers lived with the knowledge that every detail they carved was a gamble with their own survival. Imagine the scene. A chief stands beneath a canopy of palm fronds, his face grim, his eyes sharp. In front of him sits an altar carved by one of his most trusted servants. It looks great from afar, the colors bright, the lines crisp, the details intricate. But up close, there are problems. The eyes look blank, the beard is lopsided, the hands are shriveled. The carver kneels before his patron, knowing that every imperfection will be judged, knowing that his own life may depend on it. At moments like these, you could see the tension in a carver's face, how his muscles would tense, how his eyes would dart, how his hands would twist. In his heart, he would pray for understanding, begging for his patron's mercy, hoping that his devotion to the ancestors would shine through. He wasn't alone in his anxiety. Attendants stood nearby, their faces pale, their eyes watchful. One held a sacrificial knife, ready to cut the throat of any who spoke out of turn. Another cradled a burning torch, ready to ignite any false accusation. As the chief inspected the figure, silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the distant buzz of insects. When the chief finally spoke, his voice boomed, echoing across the room. He pointed a finger at the figure, his eyes narrowed. He asked a question, a simple question that could change everything. "Is this right? Right?" The attendant with the knife inhaled sharply. The carver's eyes widened. This was the moment of truth. If the chief deemed the statue flawed, he could banish the carver, ruin his career, destroy his life. But if he found it acceptable, the danger would pass. For now, the carver would survive to carve another day. This kind of tension filled every second of a carver's life. Every line he carved could bring him closer to ruin, but also closer to redemption. Every stroke of his chisel was a gamble with his very survival. So, as the Bakongo encountered the Portuguese and the carving continued late into the night, the stakes were high. The future of a culture rested on the precision of hand, the sharpness of a tool, the purity of heart. It was a world where belief and reality were the same, where every carving session felt like walking a tightrope between life and death, where the finest edge was not just the blade of a chisel, but the judgment of spirits and society alike. And as the fire crackled softly and we rested beneath the stars, the carver stared at his finished figure, the sweat on his brow mingling with the ash on his skin. Fear and relief, hope and despair warred within him, for he knew that no matter how perfect his craft, no matter how pure his intentions, the ultimate arbiter of his fate was the unseen world, the realm of the ancestors and the spirits, the domain of the Nkizi. When the Bakongo spoke of Nkizi, they did not mean just wood and iron. They spoke of living vessels, bodies crafted by human hands but awakened by ancestral breath. In the stillness of a carver's hut, a rough block of wood could, with care and ritual, become a healer, a protector, or even a judge. The Nkizi was not an ornament. It was a heartbeat carved into form. And so, our story begins in the quiet sanctity of such a hut. Dimly lit by the soft glow of a central fire, surrounded by half-finished figures and tools of his trade, sits a master carver. His wrinkled face, a map of smiles and wisdom, gazes intently at a block of wood, feeling its grain, imagining the being that will emerge. For the Bakongo people of the Congo rainforest, the art of carving was not merely a craft. It was a conversation with the spirit world. It was about breathing life into wood and awakening souls that had slept for centuries. But how does one breathe life into inanimate wood, you might ask? And what is the significance of these wooden idols to the Bakongo people? If you are watching this video, chances are you share a curiosity about the mystical practices of indigenous cultures and have heard about the powerful role of fetishes like the Nkisi Nkondi in Central Africa. Today, we delve deep into the heart of the Congo, exploring a world where wood becomes flesh, iron flows with life energy, and rituals bridge the gap between the seen and unseen. Each Nkizi began as a collaboration. The carver shaped its body, chiseling features that balanced awe with familiarity. But the figure was incomplete until the ritual expert, the Ngonga, filled its core with sacred substances. Powders ground from roots, clay from riverbanks, shards of iron, and sometimes even traces of bone or ash. To outsiders, these were strange mixtures. To the Bakongo, they were the essence of healing. The Nkizi stood ready to absorb illness, to chase away curses, and to restore balance where the living faltered. It's important to understand that for the Bakongo, these figures aren't idols in the conventional sense. They aren't objects of worship. Instead, they are intermediaries, a physical manifestation of spiritual power that can be accessed and directed. Think of them as vessels of immense power, imbued with the concentrated life force or mana of the community. So, when the carving was complete, it wasn't just a piece of art. It was an expectant presence, charged with potential. Now, let's see how this potential is realized. Let's look at the process of imbuing the Nkizi with spiritual power. The air in the ritual hut crackles with anticipation. The master carver has completed his work. The figure is complete, yet it lacks a soul, a spark of consciousness. This is the moment when the Nganga, the ritual specialist, steps forward. His task is not easy. He is about to awaken a spirit, channel its power, and bind it to the carved form. He begins by preparing the interior of the figure. Using a small mallet and chisel, he hollows out the chest cavity, creating a space to contain the vital essence. This void is more than just a physical cavity. It's the expectant heart of the future spirit. Then comes the infusion, the actual binding of spiritual power. The Nganga reaches for a collection of carefully gathered ingredients. These can include ground plant matter, minerals, clay, and even fragments of previous rituals. Each ingredient has its own unique properties, its own vibrational frequency. Together, they form a complex symphony of spiritual power. The components are placed one by one into the hollow space. It's not just a physical act of insertion, it's a ritualized dance, a ceremony of invocation. As each item finds its place, the Nganga chants, his voice echoing the ancient rhythms of his ancestors. The hut resonates with the power of his words. The climax of this transformation is the addition of iron. Iron, with its strong conductive properties, acts as a catalyst, channeling and concentrating the spiritual energies. Fragments of iron are inserted into the figure, secured with fibers or held in place by the very essence of the ritual. At this point, the figure is more than just wood and metal. It's a living container of condensed spiritual power. Finally, the ritual specialist seals the figure, hiding the evidence of the transformative process. This concealment is intentional, preserving the sanctity of the ritual and maintaining the potency of the spirit within. The figure now stands complete, an outward form concealing a dynamic, potent force. Now let's explore how the villagers interact with these powerful entities and the various roles they play. The villagers approach the figure with respect and reverence. The act of greeting it is a ritual in itself, a recognition of the potent spirit that resides within. Chants and greetings are not mere formalities. They are expressions of connection, acknowledging the spiritual being as an integral part of their community. As the ritual unfolds, the villagers begin to call upon the spirit, invoking its attention and presence. This is not a summoning in the negative sense, but a respectful petition, a request for the spirit's awareness. The purpose of these interactions is multifaceted. Villagers come seeking guidance, protection, healing, and justice. For instance, when a child falls ill, the community might turn to the Nkizi for aid. The healer would awaken the spirit within the wood, murmuring chants and striking iron nails into its body to bind oaths, promises, and cures. Each nail was a declaration. Here lies the sickness. Here lies the cure. And the wood absorbed it, carrying pain into silence. These figures were also called upon to settle disputes and ensure justice. In cases of conflict, the villagers would bring their grievances to the Nkizi, seeking a resolution based on truth and fairness. The figure, with its spiritual sensitivity, was believed to discern right from wrong and guide the community towards reconciliation. But the Nkizi wasn't just a passive receiver of requests. It was an active participant in the lives of the village. It was believed to have its own will, its own desires and needs. The villagers had to reciprocate with offerings, gifts and sacrifices to keep the spirit content and ensure its continued support. This interaction wasn't one-sided. The villagers gained protection, guidance and healing. In return, they nurtured a bond with the spiritual realm, honoring the ancient wisdom enshrined in these wooden figures. If you're enjoying this video, please consider supporting us. Your support helps us continue sharing these captivating stories. It is essential to understand that the significance of the Nkizi went beyond its physical form. It represented a profound connection to the spiritual world, a tangible link to the ancestors and the forces of nature. Carvers and ritual specialists worked in harmony, breathing life into wood and awakening spirits through intricate rituals. These figures weren't just objects of power, they were catalysts for healing, justice, and spiritual growth. They embodied the essence of the Bakongo people's worldview, where the boundaries between the physical and spiritual, the human and natural, were beautifully blurred. In today's world, where technology often overshadows tradition and progress seems synonymous with modernization, the art of carving and ritual holds a timeless appeal. It reminds us of a world where nature isn't just admired, it's revered, where every tree, every root, every shard of iron carries within it a story, a history, a spiritual resonance. The art of carving and ritual is a testament to human ingenuity, creativity, and the eternal human quest to understand and connect with the mysteries of existence. It's an invitation to look beyond the surface, to delve into the heart of cultures that have preserved traditions that are thousands of years old. It's a journey back to a time when the world was viewed as a living, breathing entity, a time when the whispers of the wind carried secrets of the universe and the rustling leaves shared stories of the past. In the heart of the Congo rainforest, nestled between emerald green canopies and the rhythmic pulse of tribal drums, there exists a people whose lives intertwine with the spirits of the forest. This is a narrative of the Bakongo, a tribe whose connection to the spiritual realm is so profound that their very existence revolves around it. And at the center of this spiritual universe are the Nkizi, powerful figures that serve as intermediaries between the physical and the metaphysical. Welcome to our channel, where today we're diving deep into the world of the Bakongo, exploring the intricate details of their culture, beliefs, and the fascinating figures that define their spiritual landscape. To live near an Nkizi was to live with respect, and sometimes with fear. These figures were never ordinary wood, never just a carving left to gather dust. They demanded boundaries. A villager might pass a shrine and avert his eyes, knowing that to look too long was to risk being seen in return, not by the carved face, but by the spirit dwelling within it. These Nkizi were not mere idols. They were embodiments of ancestral wisdom and spiritual power. To gaze upon them was to confront the unseen forces that shaped their world. It wasn't arrogance or disrespect that the villagers feared, but rather the potential for intrusion. The NCIs were believed to possess the ability to see, hear, and interact with the world around them, making it imperative for the living to tread carefully in their presence. The taboos surrounding the Nkizi were as precise as the chisels that shaped them. Some could only be approached at night, when the veil between the living and the unseen was thinner. Others could never be touched except by the Ngonga, who alone knew the medicine's binding spirit to form. Breaking these rules carried a price. A child who played near a forbidden Nkizi might fall ill. A thief who dared to steal one could meet a sudden and unexplainable death. These were not superstitions. They were lived realities. lessons carved as deeply into memory as the nails hammered into the figures themselves. Yet these taboos weren't merely about fear. They also instilled respect and reverence, ensuring that each interaction with the Nkizi was a moment of mindfulness and connection to the spiritual realm. In a world where the boundaries between the seen and the unseen were fluid, these restrictions weren't limitations, but rather guidelines to navigate the spiritual currents that permeated every aspect of their lives. And now, let's delve deeper into this intricate world. Picture a dense jungle, the air thick with humidity and the buzz of insects. In the distance, the rhythmic beat of a drum echoes, signaling the heart of the Congo rainforest. Here, amidst towering trees and vibrant foliage, there exists a people whose traditions have remained unchanged for generations. This is the Bakongo, a tribe whose connection to the spiritual realm is deeply rooted in their daily lives. Their world is filled with spirits, both benevolent and malevolent, and it's their understanding of these spirits that shapes their every move. At the core of their spiritual practices are the Nkz, powerful figures that act as intermediaries between the physical world and the spiritual realm. These figures aren't just carvings, they're vessels for spirits, each with its unique personality, powers, and demands. Now let's take a closer look at these enigmatic figures. The Nkz come in various sizes, from small handheld figures to towering statues. Each one is intricately carved with distinctive features, reflecting their unique role within the community. Some represent ancestors, their faces bearing a striking resemblance to the villagers they've descended from. Others embody natural forces like water or thunder, their forms adorned with symbols that signify their connection to the elements. But what truly sets the Nkz apart are the rituals that surround them. Approaching an Nkz isn't a casual affair. It's a communion with the spiritual realm. Villagers must prepare themselves, often through elaborate ceremonies, before they can hope to interact with these powerful figures. They bathe, fast, and make offerings, demonstrating their commitment and respect before engaging in any form of communication. But why do they engage in these rituals? What purpose do the Nkz serve in their lives? The answer lies in the belief that these figures hold immense power. They're not just passive intermediaries, they're active participants in the lives of the Bakongo. Through the Nkz, the spirits communicate their will, offering guidance, warnings, and sometimes even pronouncements of good fortune. By following the rituals and taboos associated with these figures, the villagers ensure that the spirits favor them, protecting them from harm and guiding them towards prosperity. In essence, the Nkz are more than just spiritual intermediaries. They're integral members of the Bakongo community. Their presence permeates every aspect of village life, influencing decision-making, social interactions, and even the built environment. But the influence of the Nkz doesn't end at the village outskirts. It extends deep into the hearts and minds of those who inhabit it. The creation of these figures is a highly revered craft, typically passed down through generations of skilled artisans. The carvers, known as Nganga, possess specialized knowledge and abilities, allowing them to imbue the figures with the necessary power to interact with the spiritual realm. But being a woodcarver is no ordinary profession. It's a calling, a responsibility, and a privilege. The process of creating an Nkz is deeply spiritual, filled with rituals and taboos designed to ensure the figure's potency and safety. The wood used must be sourced and treated with reverence, and every cut and carve is imbued with meaning. The materials for an Nkz are anything but mundane. The wood, often sourced from specific trees, is believed to possess inherent spiritual qualities. The most revered wood comes from trees struck by lightning, signifying their connection to the divine. Once selected, the wood is treated with various substances, including special clays, minerals, and plant extracts. These treatments not only prepare the wood, but infuse it with protective powers, ensuring the figure's durability and efficacy. Every stage of the carving process is steeped in symbolism and ritual. The tools used, the techniques employed, and even the sounds produced during carving are believed to influence the figure's power. The carver must be in tune with the spirit of the wood, communicating with it through every stroke of his knife or chisel. It's not merely a physical transformation, but a spiritual communion that imbues the figure with life. And finally, the finishing touches are equally important. The NCZ are often adorned with a variety of embellishments, such as beads, feathers, cloth, and even human hair. These additions not only enhance the figure's aesthetic appeal, but also serve to connect it to the physical world. They become focal points for offerings and libations, creating a tangible link between the spiritual and physical realms. The creation of an enkizi isn't just an artistic endeavor, it's a spiritual odyssey. The carver acts as a conduit, channeling the spirit of the wood into a form that can interact with the world. It's a delicate balance of tradition, skill, and reverence, resulting in figures that are more than just carvings. They're powerful embodiments of the spiritual essence of the Congo rainforest. Imagine sitting around a flickering campfire, listening to the elders recount tales of bravery, adventure, and magic. This is a common sight in many cultures, including the Bakongo. Storytelling is more than just entertainment. It's a way to transmit cultural knowledge and values from one generation to the next. In the case of the Bakongo, their stories often revolve around the Enkizi and the spirits that inhabit them. Tales of heroic deeds performed by ancestors, of battles against malevolent spirits, and of the wisdom gained through communion with the Enkizi are shared, ensuring that these traditions remain alive and vibrant. The stories serve multiple purposes. They entertain, educate, and inspire. Children are captivated by tales of bravery, learning valuable lessons through the adventures of their culture's heroes. The stories instill a sense of community, shared identity, and belonging, fostering a strong sense of cultural pride. So let's join the Bakongo around their campfire and listen to some of their captivating stories. Perhaps we'll hear about a young hunter who sought the aid of a powerful Enkizi to protect him on his journey. Or maybe a tale of a mysterious spirit that caused havoc in the village until a wise Nganga intervened. As the night deepens, we'll be transported to a world where the boundaries between reality and myth are blurred, and where the spirits of the forest hold sway over the destinies of men. So let's continue our journey into the heart of the Congo rainforest, where the whispers of ancient traditions mingle with the rustling leaves and the drumming of tribal drums. Each step takes us deeper into a world where the spiritual and physical realms intertwine, guided by the wisdom of the elders and the artistry of the Nganga. As we reflect on the rich tapestry of Bakongo culture, one thing becomes clear. Their connection to their spiritual heritage is a source of strength, unity, and inspiration. From the awe-inspiring Enkizi to the captivating storytelling traditions, we've witnessed a culture that honors its past, embraces its traditions, and looks to the future with unwavering resilience. So let us carry with us the spirit of the Bakongo, the respect for nature, the reverence for ancestors, and the courage to face life's challenges head-on. Their stories and traditions serve as a reminder of the beauty and diversity of human culture and the profound connection we all have to our spiritual roots. To the untrained eye, an Enkizi might seem a simple figure of wood, a body with a cavity, a face scarred by nails or blades. sometimes crowned with feathers or shells. But within those forms, entire wars were fought. An Exi might defend a village against drought, shield a family from betrayal, or turn the path of an enemy's spear before it struck its mark. Yet the same figure could just as easily punish, striking sickness into the guilty or dragging liars into shame. In the heart of the Congo River villages, among the Boka people, an ancient art was born. An art that didn't just shape wood, but sculpted destinies. It danced on the edge of sight, where reality yielded to the unseen, where beliefs gave birth to powers that could move mountains or bring them crashing down. And at the center of this unseen world stood the Nkaizi figures of power so potent that they could tip the scales of fate. When disputes flared between clans, it was not always spears that decided the matter. A powerful Nkaizi, invoked by the Nganga, could settle the argument before the first blow was struck. Warriors stood trembling before the wooden figure, swearing oaths of peace. Because to break them meant more than dishonor. It meant that the spirit lodged in the Nkaizi would hunt them down, unseen but relentless. In this way, woodcarving became a weapon sharper than iron, because belief itself carried the force of law. And yet, this power was not wielded lightly. To channel the spirit of the Nkaizi, to become its vessel, was a heavy burden. It demanded purity of thought and deed, a life lived in harmony with the rhythms of the unseen. For the Nkaizi were not mere figures of wood. They were embodiments of the spiritual essence that permeated all of existence. They were the tangible links to the invisible, the voice of the spirits given form in wood and adorned with symbols that whispered their purpose to those who knew how to listen. Each scar on their faces, each nail or blade embedded in their bodies, was a testament to their power. These were not merely decorative, but functional, acting as anchors for the spirits, binding them to the figure and giving them strength. The more weathered the Nkai's, the more potent it became, its power growing with each passing conflict, each battle fought and won on its behalf. And then there were the feathers and shells, symbols of the bird and marine realms, signs of the Nkaizi's connection to the spiritual forces that soared through the skies or danced in the depths of the river. These adornments did not just enhance the figure's appearance, they amplified its abilities, allowing it to draw upon the swiftness of the bird or the untamed fury of the ocean. The creation of these figures was not a casual affair, but a profound ceremony, a dialogue between the human and the divine. Carvers were not just artists, but conduits of power, carefully channeling the essence of the Nkaizi's spirit into the very grain of the wood. Each curve, each angle, each symbol was a prayer, a plea to the spirit to make its home within the figure. As the carving progressed, the figure came alive, not just in the hands of the carver, but in the hearts and minds of the villagers. It became the repository of their hopes, their fears, their dreams of protection, and their worst nightmares of retribution. But as the Nkaizi grew in power, so did the danger of wielding it. For the line between protector and destroyer was razor thin, and many were those who fell victim to its unforgiving nature. Now let us turn our attention to another aspect of these enigmatic figures, their ability to safeguard against the malevolent forces that lurked in the shadows. The Nkaizi, with its fierce visage and powerful presence, served as a bulwark against the unseen, shielding the innocent from the machinations of evil spirits and malevolent sorcery. In a world where the boundaries between good and evil were often blurred, the Nkaizi stood as a beacon of safety, a silent guardian watching over those it was meant to protect. Its protective gaze could ward off illness and misfortune, turning away evil spirits that sought to cause harm. The very sight of the Nkaizi, with its array of sharp objects and imposing demeanor, was enough to deter those who wished to do harm, serving as a constant reminder of the consequences of malevolent intent. Furthermore, the NKZ was not merely a passive shield, but an active force in the defense of the community. During times of conflict, it was believed that the NKZ could imbue its followers with courage and strength, turning fear into confidence and doubt into unwavering belief. This infusion of power could turn ordinary villagers into formidable protectors of their community, bolstering their resolve and determination in the face of danger. However, the NKZ's protective abilities were not without limits. It demanded respect, reverence, and a deep understanding of its power. Those who dared to mock or disrespect the NKZ risked incurring its wrath, finding themselves on the receiving end of its formidable powers. Moreover, the effectiveness of the NKZ depended on the purity of intent of those who invoked it. If the motives were impure, if the intentions were driven by selfishness or greed, the NKZ could turn against its would-be wielder, unleashing its full force with devastating consequences. Thus, the NKZ, with its dual nature of protector and punisher, stood as a powerful symbol of the delicate balance between good and evil, reminding the Baka people that true power lay not in brute force, but in the harmony between the spiritual and the material. Yet, there was a price for such power. The protector who shielded your family could also turn its gaze upon you. Villagers told of men who tried to bend NKZ to selfish ends, to grow rich unjustly, to harm rivals for no cause, and who found themselves undone. Their bodies grew thin, their minds restless, their homes filled with whispers. The NKZ was never fooled. It carried within it the balance of justice. Protector to the innocent, punisher to the greedy. It is a lesson that echoes across the ages, a reminder that the greatest power lies not in dominating others, but in understanding and respecting the delicate balance of the world. This duality, this constant negotiation between the forces of light and darkness, became the defining feature of the NKZ's legacy, ensuring that its influence over the Baka people's lives remained both revered and feared for generations to come. For the carvers, this duality weighed heavily. Each figure they created was not only an object, but a battlefield. They were shaping weapons of the invisible world, tools that could summon healing or destruction. A misplaced symbol, a hollow carved too shallow or too deep, could alter the destiny of the NKZ's spirit. In their hands, wood was not neutral. It was alive with possibility, and every strike of the chisel echoed with unseen battles waiting to unfold. Yet, the risk was a necessary one. The NKZ had to be powerful, even terrifying, to hold back the darkness that clawed at the edges of their world. And so the carvers embraced the burden, pouring their skill and reverence into each figure, ensuring that the NKZ would stand as resolute as the center of their world, as unyielding as the spirits that dwelt within them. The art of carving the NKZ thus became a dance on the edge of existence, a negotiation with the unseen, where the slightest misstep could tip the balance between creation and destruction. But in the hands of a master carver, it was a power like unto God, capable of shaping the very fabric of their world and safeguarding their very souls. Imagine you are a young apprentice, eager to learn the secrets of the NKZ. Your village elder, a renowned carver, takes you aside. His weathered hands grip a small, unassuming piece of wood. As he looks at it, you see a spark ignite in his eyes, a connection to something beyond the physical world. He begins to carve, each stroke precise, purposeful. You watch, mesmerized, as from the mundane block of wood, a fierce visage emerges, taking shape with each passing moment. The elder pauses, his gaze intense. Do you feel it? He asks, his voice hushed. "You do feel something, a stirring in your own spirit, a sense of awe and wonder. But you're not sure if it's real or imagined. Is the Nkisi truly coming to life? Or is it the power of suggestion, the collective belief of your people woven into reality?" As the carving nears completion, the elder shares stories of the Nkisi, tales of its power, its protective embrace, its terrible wrath. With each tale, your respect deepens, your fear grows. You realize that what you are witnessing is not just a wooden figure, but a conduit to the unseen, a living embodiment of the spiritual essence that animates your world. Finally, the Nkisi is complete. The elder holds it up, the firelight dancing in its sharp eyes. He explains the intricacies of its form, the significance of every scar, every adornment, every symbol. You see now that it is not just a weapon, but a shield, a bulwark against the darkness that threatens to engulf your world. He places the Nkisi on a pedestal, its presence commanding respect and reverence. You understand now why your people fear the Nkisi, why they respect and honor it. You feel a deep sense of responsibility, knowing that you are part of a lineage that has the power to shape the unseen, to negotiate with the spirits that dwell in the shadows. As you look into the Nkisi's eyes, you see the wisdom of centuries, the struggles, the triumphs, the tragedies. You know that in your hands, in your heart, you will carry on this tradition, honoring the past, embracing the present, and protecting the future. The flames crackle, casting long shadows on the walls of the hut. Outside, the jungle whispers secrets to the wind, and in the stillness, you hear the heartbeat of your ancestors, urging you to be worthy of the legacy you have been entrusted with. The night is dark, the spirits are restless, and the Nkisi stands vigilant, ready to face whatever darkness may come. Are you ready to join it in its eternal vigil? Every stroke of the carver's hand was a language. To outsiders, the figures of the Bakongo might appear strange, even terrifying. Bodies pierced with nails, mouths agape in silence, eyes inlaid with shells that gleamed like moonlight. But to the Bakongo themselves, every detail spoke. A raised arm could signify protection, a bent knee submission, a circle carved into the chest, the endless cycle of birth, death, and return. In wood, the carver preserved not just shape, but story. And an open cavity in its chest, shone in a dimly lit ritual house with flickering flames. The people believed the very grain of the wood carried secrets. The spiral patterns, the dark knots, the pale streaks. These were signs the spirits had already inscribed before the blade touched the bark. The carver was less a maker than a reader, coaxing out the form already hidden in the tree's heart. What he released was not his creation alone. It was the world's story, whispered through timber and time. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Symbols wove themselves into every figure. Cowrie shells for wealth, iron blades for strength. Mirrors to reflect hidden truths. Each element carried layers of meaning, understood by the initiated and feared by those who were not. A villager might pass by an Nkisi and see only wood and metal, but an elder or a priest could read the entire lineage of a family, the memory of disputes, the covenant of protection carved into its form. And so, wood carving became a kind of text, a script without letters, yet more enduring than words. Where paper crumbled and ink faded, the Nkisi stood firm, its symbols outlasting generations. Each stroke of the chisel was both prayer and record, embedding history in sacred wood. For those who could read its grain, an Nkisi was not only a figure of power, but a book of the unseen. Cap-cut prompt, a Bakongo Ngonga, seated before several Nkisi of varying sizes, each with nails and shells and feathers, as the evening light falls across the ritual space. Amongst the Bakongo people of the Congo rainforest, the art of wood carving is more than a craft. It's a conversation with the unseen. It's a dialogue between the living and the ancestral spirits that guide their world. It's a living, breathing testament to the rich culture of the Bakongo people. Now let's continue our exploration. Back in the heart of the Congo rainforest, the Nkisi stands as a silent sentinel, its wooden gaze fixed on the world. These figures aren't just works of art. They are vessels of power, imbued with the spiritual energy of the Bakongo people. Now we're going to delve into how these figures are made and the profound meaning behind their creation. Imagine a clearing in the dense Congolese jungle. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and the sound of cicadas. In the center, a group of men are gathered around a wooden sculpture. Their faces are etched with concentration as they work on the figure with a variety of tools. This is the Nganga, the heart and soul of the Bakongo people. The process of creating an Nkisi is a sacred ritual. It's not just about shaping wood into a particular form. It's about channeling the essence of the spirit world. Each Nkisi is unique, crafted to embody the spirit of a particular ancestor or spirit. The carvers don't just follow a design. They listen to the spirit, feeling its presence guide their hands. The choice of wood is no accident. Different types of wood are believed to resonate with different spirits. The Ngonga, or master carver, consults with the village elders and the family of the person for whom the sculpture is being made. They seek to understand the spirit's nature and the message it wants to convey. Once the wood is selected, the work begins. The carver starts by making incisions into the wood. These lines are not random. They are carefully planned to direct the flow of the sculpture. As the figure starts to take shape, the carver's knowledge of the spirit world is put to the test. They must ensure that the Nkisi is not just aesthetically pleasing, but also spiritually accurate. Each detail is important, from the position of the arms to the expression on the face. The Nkisi is more than a statue. It's a representation of the spirit, a conduit through which the spirit can interact with the physical world. As the figure nears completion, the carver prepares it for its final stage, imbuing it with the essence of the spirit. This is done through a series of rituals, including the use of water, salt, and offerings to the spirits. Once the Nkisi is complete, it is not just placed in a museum or a private collection. It becomes an integral part of the community. It is often placed in a prominent location in the village, such as the chief's palace or a communal building. The Nkisi serves as a reminder of the spirit's presence, a silent guardian watching over the community. And so the Nkisi continues to stand, a testament to the artistry and spirituality of the Bakongo people. Each figure is a masterpiece, a unique blend of art and religion that captures the essence of the spirit world. Imagine you are strolling through a bustling market in the heart of an African city. The air is thick with the aroma of spices, fresh produce, and the energy of countless interactions. Amidst the vibrant chaos, your gaze falls upon a stall displaying exquisite wood carvings. You see masks with intricate designs and figures frozen in mid-movement. Each piece seems to have a story etched into its being. Intrigued, you inquire about these carvings and learn that they are from the Congo, specifically from the Bakongo people. The vendor speaks passionately about the cultural significance of these works of art, mentioning the legendary status of the Bakongo carvers and their unique ability to breathe life into wood. As you examine a particularly captivating mask, The vendor mentions a term you haven't heard before, enkizi. He explains that this term refers to a type of sculpture, a powerful symbol deeply rooted in the history and rituals of the Bakongo people. It is said that in ancient times, the Bakongo had no written language, and thus their history, traditions, and values were passed down orally through generations. This led to the emergence of a unique tradition where every carving, every line, and every detail was infused with layers of meaning and symbolism, transforming the artwork into a tangible representation of their intangible heritage. The concept of enkizi goes beyond just a piece of art. It becomes a vessel of storytelling, preserving the essence of the Bakongo culture. Imagine sitting around a campfire as dusk settles and elders recount tales of bravery, wisdom, and ancestral traditions. The flickering flames cast dancing shadows on the faces gathered around, creating an intimate atmosphere where stories come to life. These narratives become the building blocks of identity, shaping the worldview and values of the community. And now, let's shift our focus to the carvers in this narrative. They are not just artisans, but storytellers in their own right. Their tools, the chisels and knives, become extensions of their hands, translating the spoken word into the visual language of wood. The carver listens intently, his eyes focused on the storyteller, absorbing the tales that have been passed down through generations. As the stories unfold, he begins to visualize the characters, the scenes, and the emotions embedded within them. With every turn of the phrase, every twist and turn of the narrative, he sees the potential for expression in wood. Once the stories are complete, the carver retires to his workshop. Here, surrounded by his tools and the raw materials of his craft, he begins to bring the stories to life. The smooth surface of the wood is like a canvas waiting for a masterpiece. He selects a piece of wood that feels right for the story he wants to carve. The grain of the wood, its knots and curves, become part of the narrative. The first strokes of his chisel are tentative, almost reverent. He's not just shaping wood, he's giving form to stories. Time seems to stand still in this space as the carver loses himself in his work. Hours turn into days as he chips away at the wood, slowly revealing the forms within. The rhythmic thud of his hammer echoes in the quiet workshop, a steady beat accompanying his creative dance. The dust from the carving settles into the corners, a testament to the effort and precision involved in this art form. As the carving progresses, the carver's hands move with confidence, guided by an unseen force. The design emerges from his fingertips, taking on a life of its own. Each line he etches into the wood holds a layer of meaning, a fragment of the story waiting to be deciphered. The contours of the figures become clearer, their expressions taking shape. Every curve and groove tells a part of the tale. The Bakongo carver's skill is not just in the execution, it's in the translation. He takes intangible stories, memories, and beliefs and infuses them into the very essence of the wood. The finished carving is not just an object, it's a tangible representation of the intangible cultural heritage of the Bakongo people. Now imagine you are attending a ceremony in a remote village in the Congo. The atmosphere is charged with anticipation. The villagers are gathered to celebrate an important event, and a central figure in this celebration is a newly carved enkizi. As the procession approaches, you see the mask being carried aloft, its features commanding respect and awe. The mask itself is a powerful symbol representing the spirits and ancestral beings revered by the community. The intricately carved details, the haunting gaze, seem to hold ancient wisdom and power. During the ceremony, the mask comes to life. The person wearing it transforms into a conduit between the physical and spiritual realms. The rhythmic drumming intensifies, And as the mask dances to the beat, it becomes more than just a piece of wood. It embodies the stories, myths and legends that have been woven into its being. The villagers participate with reverence and joy, their voices echoing the tales that have echoed through generations. After the ceremony, you find yourself drawn to the mask. You want to understand the stories it silently speaks of. And then you realize that the mask isn't just telling a story, it's a part of one. It's a link in the chain of tradition that connects the past, present, and future of the Bakongo people. These sculptures serve as tangible links to a shared history, reminding the community of their roots and the values that have guided them through the ages. When you look at these carvings, you are witnessing more than just craftsmanship. You are seeing the visual embodiment of a people's history, beliefs, and aspirations. Every curve, every texture, and every detail is a brushstroke in the grand canvas of their cultural narrative. The Bakongo carvers have ensured that their stories live on, not just in memory, but in wood, becoming a legacy that can be passed down to generations to come. Their art form stands as a beacon of cultural pride, demonstrating the power of storytelling and the universality of human expression. In the realm of African art, the Bakongo wood carvings hold a unique place of honor. Their distinctive style and profound cultural significance set them apart, making them a treasure not just for the Congo, but for all who appreciate the beauty of human creativity. When the Bakongo people of the Congo rainforest first encountered European missionaries, the Christians found themselves facing an unexpected challenge. The indigenous beliefs of the Bakongo were not easily erased. Their religious ideas were deeply entwined with the natural world, expressed through powerful carvings and rituals. One of their most striking practices involved covering these sculptures with nails. At first glance, it appeared as if the native people were destroying the very figures they worshipped. This act seemed to make no sense to the missionaries. Why would they damage something they revered? However, upon closer examination, there was a deeper meaning behind this practice that the missionaries failed to grasp. Before we dive into this intriguing aspect of the Bakongo culture, let's take a moment to appreciate your support. If you find our videos interesting and informative, please consider supporting us. Your support helps us continue sharing captivating stories like this one. Now, let's continue. The Bakongo did not see carvings as mute objects. They were more like silent priests, standing, watching, and holding power without the need for speech. To approach a carved enkizi or mask was not like walking up to wood. It was like entering into dialogue with the invisible. The figure itself did not speak, but it carried within it the breath of ancestors, the weight of prayers, and the authority of ritual specialists who awakened it through chants, herbs, and sacrifice. When a family sought healing, they might turn to a carved enkizi for aid. It did not speak, but its very presence reassured them that unseen forces were at work. When a community demanded justice, nails were driven into a figure's chest or belly, each blow summoning its spirit to witness oaths and punish liars. The wood did not move, but the silence was louder than words. A silence that said, "I see, I remember, and I will answer." And now for a dramatic moment, captured in a still frame with haunting music swelling. We zoom in on the face of an enkizi covered with nails, its shadow stretching long and eerie on the wall behind it. This silence gave the carvings their deepest strength. Words can be twisted, forgotten, or denied, but the carved figure remained. Its unblinking eyes and rigid stance reminded people of the permanence of spiritual law. The elders would say, "A carver gives the priest a tongue of silence." That silence, paradoxically, was more terrifying than a voice. A priest could be bribed or persuaded, but a carved enkizi did not waver. Its judgment belonged to forces beyond men. Now let's shift to a more intimate scene. As the sun sets, casting warm hues across a small village, we see a family gathered around a humble shrine within their home. Flickering candlelight dances on a collection of modest wooden carvings nestled on a shelf. There's a sense of peace and quiet reverence in this space, a place where the tangible and the spiritual intertwine. Not all carvings were instruments of fear. Some stood in shrines as guardians of fertility, ensuring crops would flourish and children would be born. Others watched over doorways, protecting households from spirits of sickness. Each figure, however modest, carried a role that exceeded its physical form. It was both guardian and judge, healer and punisher, a priest without breath, clothed in wood and spirit. The act of nailing, far from being an act of destruction, was a way of imbuing the figure with even greater power. By driving nails into the sculpture, they were essentially piercing the veil between the physical and spiritual realms, allowing the spirit to be more fully present within the figure. It was as if the nails themselves were keys, unlocking the full potential of the sculpture as a conduit between the visible world and the unseen forces that governed it. And now we find ourselves in a bustling marketplace, alive with the sights and sounds of daily life. Amidst the vibrant fabrics and lively bartering, there's a group of villagers gathered around a skilled carver, listening intently as he shares tales of the past. His stories come to life as he expertly crafts a new sculpture, breathing life into the wood with each precise cut of his knife. To the Bakongo people, the act of carving itself was considered sacred. It was believed that when a skilled carver took a sharp knife to a block of wood, he was actually inviting a spirit to enter the figure he was creating. In essence, the carving was not just a piece of art, but a vessel for a spiritual presence. This perspective imbued every sculpture with a sense of sanctity, regardless of its size or purpose. Even the smallest carving was seen as a potential abode for a spirit, and thus deserved respect and care. Let's take a closer look at the tools of the trade, the knives used by these master carvers. Each tool, with its unique shape and purpose, becomes a conduit for the transfer of spiritual energy. The carver's hands, calloused and strong, are not merely manipulating wood, but coaxing a spirit to take form. Every chip of wood, every smooth curve, is a step in the creation of a vessel for the unseen. In this way, the art of carving wasn't just a craft, it was a spiritual practice. The carver wasn't just an artist, he was a medium, a link between the material world and the realm of spirits. His creations weren't just sculptures, they were living presences, imbued with the essence of the unseen. There was also beauty in this quiet power. Its presence was not in sound, but in stillness. It was not in words, but in the weight of silence. The carvings, especially the Enkizi, were silent teachers. They had no voice, yet they spoke volumes. They told stories of heritage, of heroes, of lessons learned over generations. Each line etched into the wood, each curve and contour was a chapter in the unwritten history of the Bakongo. Their stories were not confined to a book or written in sand. They lived in the grain of the wood, in the sturdy stance of a figure, in the knowing tilt of its head. These silent stories were a constant, a bulwark against the changing tides of time. They ensured that wisdom, once spoken, would never be silenced. We are now in the heart of a vibrant ceremony. The air is thick with anticipation as members of the Bakongo community gather in a circle around a fire. The rhythmic beat of drums echoes in the twilight, mingling with the murmur of voices. In the center of the circle, a young boy sits entranced, watching a skilled craftsman transform a simple block of wood into a captivating sculpture. As the ceremony progresses, the boy is not just observing the creation of a sculpture, He is witnessing the birth of a spiritual entity. For the Bakongo, this process is deeply spiritual, a sacred act that transcends the physical transformation of wood. The sculptor is not just an artist. He is a conduit between the physical world and the realm of spirits. With each stroke of his knife, he is inviting ancestral spirits to reside within the figure he is creating. The boy watches with wide eyes as the spirit gradually takes form, as if the wood itself is coming alive under the sculptor's touch. He sees the spirit's essence being channeled through the knife, breathed into the sculpture, infused into every curve and crevice of the emerging form. Now we find ourselves in a contemplative moment. The ceremony has ended, and the boy, deeply moved by the experience, walks alone along a forest path. The fading light filters through the trees, casting long shadows on the forest floor. As he walks, he thinks back to the ceremony, to the birth of the spirit, to the silent wisdom of the carvings. He realizes that his heritage is not just about oral traditions or spoken histories. It is also enshrined in the timeless silence of these sculptures. He understands now that the true stories of his people are etched in wood, whispered in the grain, resonating in the stillness of their presence. As the last rays of sunlight fade away, he turns back, ready to carry the silent wisdom of his heritage within him. So, the next time you come across a carving from the Congo, don't just see wood and nails. See the silent priests of the Bakongo, rooted in tradition, reaching towards the heavens. Their presence may be quiet, but their message is clear. They are the keepers of stories, the embodiment of heritage, the silent teachers of a people. Listen to their stories, feel their strength, and learn from their quiet wisdom. Because sometimes the loudest messages are spoken in the quietest of voices. As we step from the intimate world of village shrines into the halls of power, the story of Bakongo carving changes its weight. Here, on the polished mats of kings and within the ritual circles of priests, wood carving was not only sacred, it was political. A carving could crown a ruler with legitimacy, strengthen the hand of a priest, or terrify rivals into submission. Kings, especially, understood that their authority rested not only in armies or wealth, but in symbols. A carving could be the difference between a war that is won and a dynasty that is remembered. A king might commission an ivory scepter tipped with the image of a clan ancestor, a thrown back studded with the teeth of captured enemies, or even a set of doors carved with images that foretold his victories. These were not merely decorative, they were declarative. To display such works was to announce, "This is my story, my lineage, and my triumph." Each carving served as a silent herald, a wooden ambassador that spoke of the king's glories before he even entered a court. But it wasn't just about showcasing past achievements. A king's carvings also served as tools to shape the future. When a rival threatened his domain, a king might order a sculpture of the enemy ruler, not as a likeness, but as a warning. Such sculptures, often placed at strategic points like gateways, were visual pronouncements of the king's power. They were a way of saying, "Beware, for my strength is such that I can capture even a king." This wasn't meant to intimidate the rival into backing down, but to actually goad him on. A wise king knew that a challenger wasn't looking for defeat, but for a chance at victory. So the king would craft the illusion of vulnerability, luring the rival into a false sense of security. Then, when the time was right, he would strike, proving once again that his reign was ordained not just by his ancestors, but by his own hand and eye. But the story doesn't end with the king. His advisors and courtiers, especially those who specialized in divination and rituals, had their own stakes in what was carved and where. For these men, the game of symbols was not about brute force, but subtle influence. They preferred smaller, more portable objects like staffs capped with human heads or miniature thrones. These were not meant to intimidate rivals, but to remind the king of his position. Every time the king looked out from his palace, every time he walked into the court, there was a carving ready to jog his memory, to reassert the protocols that made their society function. And then there are the priests, the keepers of the sacred flame who lived and breathed the spirits that moved through the carvings. For them, each piece of wood was a potential vessel, each turn and curve a possible conduit for the supernatural. While the king focused on outward displays of power, the priests worked with more intimate, more potent forms. A simple figure of wood could become an altarpiece, a mediator between the earthly and the divine. And while the king commissioned works to bolster his legacy, the priests crafted carvings to maintain the status quo, to keep the balance between the forces of order and chaos, light and dark, male and female. In fact, some priests specialized in creating figures to represent different aspects of the divine feminine. These figures weren't just passive symbols, they were active participants in the ritual drama. Through them, the priests channeled the spirits, becoming conduits through which the divine will was expressed. These moments were not mere performances. They were acts of communion, attempts to align the human world with the spiritual one. By manipulating these wooden intermediaries, the priests sought to ensure the well-being of their communities, ward off misfortune, and even influence the course of destiny. Priests, too, became power brokers through carving. They often decided which objects required activation, which spirits would be called, and which families deserved the protective or punitive power of Enkizi. Their collaboration with carvers was a guarded secret. Not every artisan was allowed to touch ritual wood. To carve for a priest meant stepping into a dangerous intimacy where mistakes could anger spirits or offend the priest himself. A carver chosen for such tasks was both honored and burdened, bound by rules and obligations that kept his life tethered to the unseen. To understand the power dynamics at play here, let's delve into the role of authority in the Bakongo culture. The Bakongo weren't the only ones who realized the power of symbols. Their kings and priests operated in a world where legitimacy was everything. A king without subjects wasn't a king at all. And what better way to establish legitimacy than through the very essence of their society? Wood, the same material that housed their homes, cradled their hearths, and marked their tribal boundaries, was now shaping their destinies. Carvers, therefore, became unwitting pawns in a high-stakes game, tasked with transforming raw material into instruments of power. The Bakongo believed that a king's power came not just from his lineage, but from the spirits that dwelt within him. And what better way to symbolize that duality than through the art of wood carving? The wood itself was seen as a repository of history, memory, and even power. The trees they used were not just botanical specimens, but living archives of their collective past. The markings on the bark, the rings inside the trunk, all whispered tales of seasons gone by. And when the tree was felled, that history didn't die, it transformed. The moment a carver laid his axe to the chosen tree, he wasn't just shaping wood, he was molding destinies. Each swing of the axe echoed with ancestral voices, each curve and contour resonating with the vibrations of the spirit world. What emerged from his workshop wasn't just a sculpture, it was a tangible link to the intangible realms. But with great power comes great responsibility. The carver's hand, therefore, was not just guided by his artistic vision, it was also governed by a set of rules and taboos. Every line he etched, every facet he polished, could either reinforce the king's divine mandate or undermine it. Every figure he sculpted could either embody the spirit's essence or mock it. The carver's skill was crucial, yes, but so was his understanding of the spiritual undercurrents that pulsed through every block of wood. He wasn't just an artist. He was a conduit, channeling the aspirations, fears, and beliefs of an entire society. Kings and priests sometimes clashed, but more often they shared this invisible economy of wood. One provided worldly authority, the other spiritual power, and the carving sat between them like a bridge. In that triangle of influence, carver, king, and priest, the fate of communities was decided. A new Enkizi could calm unrest. A carved throne could secure obedience, and a shrine object could silence a rival claim to power. It was here, in the interplay between kings and priests, that carving revealed its sharpest double edge. The same figure that healed a sick child could also enforce taxes or silence dissent. The same throne that crowned a ruler could also curse his enemies. The carver's chisel was, in truth, a political tool, and every cut into wood carved deeper into the lives of his people. As we explore further, we must remember that these carvings weren't just static objects frozen in time. They were dynamic forces that shifted and evolved as society did. They responded to changing needs, adapted to new challenges, and even played a part in shaping the very identity of the Bakongo people. From the intimate realm of the home to the grandeur of the royal court, these carvings were the threads that wove together the fabric of their culture. So the next time you encounter a Bakongo carving, don't just admire the artistry. Delve deeper into the silent story it holds. Uncover the political undercurrents, the power struggles, and the spiritual dialogues that it silently witnesses. Because, in the hands of skilled artisans, these carvings weren't just works of art, they were instruments of society, reflections of kingship, and most importantly, tangible links to the intricate relationship between humans and the spirit world. Okay, so let's talk about this question, which is, how do you get to be the most prestigious person in the room? Is it enough to be wealthy? What if you have a bunch of gold jewelry? Or what if you're the one who can raise the largest army? Well, if you're living in the Bakongo world, none of those things are enough. You need something more, something grander, something that will embody your status for everyone to see. Prestige in the Bakongo world was never merely about gold, cloth, or the number of warriors under one's call. Prestige lived in the symbols people could see, touch, and whisper about. And in this symbolic economy, carving was king. A leader who owned finely crafted Enkizi carved stools or shrines was a leader whose power was made visible in every gathering. So we're talking about chairs here. We're talking about thrones. We're talking about stools. In particular, we're talking about Enkizi, which are these elaborate stools. Sometimes they're called thrones, but they're really more like stools. And they're incredibly important because they're reused by the elite and the nobility to elevate their status when they in a gathering. They're not used for sitting per se, although you can sit on them, but they're really used to sort of assert dominance in a space. So when you bring a stool like this to a gathering, it's almost like bringing a scepter or a crown to make your status known. We don't know exactly when stools like this started being used, but given the fact that some of them include the type of wood that can only be found above ground, not underground, it seems like they came into use fairly recently, probably after the 16th century. Though earlier stools may have been made from perishable materials like bamboo, but in any case, the making of these stools elevated carving to the level of ritual performance. So think about it. When you go to a big event, maybe it's a wedding, maybe it's a funeral, maybe it's a graduation, people dress up. They put on their finest clothes. They want to look good, right? They want to be seen. Well, In the Bakongo world, the rules were the same. If you were a chief or a member of the nobility, you would put on your finest carved objects. And this wasn't just a way to look good. It was a way to make your lineage and your history visible. The design on these chairs would have stories. They would have symbols that told the story of your family. Like you could say something like, "Oh, this part of my chair has the story of how our family made war with such and such." Or, "This part of my chair shows how our family was founded." So, it was a way of talking to everybody else in the room. "Hey, we've got a lot of history. We've been here a long time. We are important." These days, we think of chairs as these ubiquitous, common objects, right? Anybody can have a chair, right? But in the Bakongo world, these stools were far from common. They were sacred, they were powerful, and the act of carving them was treated as a religious duty. So it was not just a job. It was a calling to be the person who carved these stools. Now, you might think that that kind of pressure would make it easy to tell who was the most prestigious person in the room. I mean, just look for the guy with the fancy chair, right? But, as you might expect, things aren't that simple. Carving elevated status in a way that words or boasts never could. A chief might claim ancestral authority, but when he entered a meeting place with carved regalia, his staff gleaming with intricate lines, his seat etched with protective designs, the claim was no longer empty. It was embodied, permanent, and undeniable. Prestige was not just worn, it was carved, polished, and consecrated. Now that sounds great if you're the guy with the nice carved chair, but if you're not, then having someone else show up with a nicer chair than yours is really embarrassing. Prestige was also a weapon. Carved objects were markers of competition between elites. A rival might try to commission a larger, more elaborate NCAZ than his opponent, or a more detailed throne that seemed to shine with greater spiritual favor. Art became an arms race of symbols where wood carried the weight of political rivalry. And in such contests, carvers were courted, pressured, and sometimes coerced into producing works that tipped the balance of local power. To carve was to balance on a knife edge. To carve poorly was to shame a patron. To carve with too much brilliance could attract the jealousy of rivals. Each commission was a tightrope walk, a balancing act, a gamble, and the stakes were high. A well-executed piece could advance a patron's career. A failure could bring ruin. So now you might think, okay, it's pretty easy to figure out who the best carver is, right? Just look for the one whose patrons keep getting promoted, right? The one whose patrons keep getting nicer stools. That must be the best carver. But things are not that simple. And in this way, carving slipped fully into politics. No longer just craft, no longer just ritual, it became a language of power. To own certain carvings was to command, or to display them was to intimidate. To misuse them was to invite disaster. And behind it all stood the carver, invisible yet indispensable, his hand shaping the very grammar of Bakongo prestige. It's hard to overstate how absolutely crucial these carvings were. They were so important that there were even special terms for different types of stools depending on who was going to be using them. Some were reserved for the highest chiefs, and those stools were called Engi Amakampani, which literally translates to seat of the leopard. Other stools were used by the members of the royal court, and they were called Engi A Makisi, or seats of the initiated ones. And then there were the stools that were used by commoners, and they were called Engi A Bata, or seats of the people. Even the shape of the stool mattered. Stools with backrests were reserved for women, and stools without backrests were reserved for men. And each of those categories had its own names. So to be the top dog, you didn't just need a nice stool, You needed the nicest stool, like the nicest leopard stool possible. And that means that there was always this pressure, this urgency to outdo yourself, to create something ever more elaborate. And you can see this in some of the styles of the chairs themselves. You see these patterns that seem to push outwards, that seem to compete for space. There's a real sense of dynamism in these designs, a sense that they're competing with one another, that they're trying to assert dominance over the space they inhabit. And again, the thing about chairs is that they're usually pretty small objects, right? They're not like huge, towering statues. They're something that you could actually put next to each other, and so there was always the possibility that someone could come along and outdo you, that someone could create a stool that was bigger, more elaborate, more intricately carved than yours. And that meant that the whole system was always unstable, always teetering on the edge of collapse. Because at any point, you could have a new rival come along. You could have a civil war. Someone could loot your city and take your stuff. And when that happened, you needed to be ready to flee with your valuables in tow. This led to some incredible works of art, yes, but it also led to tremendous anxiety. So you might think that to be the greatest carver, you'd want to carve the most elaborate chairs, the biggest chairs, the most prestigious chairs. But it was actually the opposite. You wanted to be subtle, you wanted to be restrained, because if you revealed too much skill, too much artistry, you were inviting trouble. You were inviting comparison. So the greatest carvers were not the ones who were the most famous, not the ones who carved the most chairs, but the ones who stayed in the background, the ones whose work went unnoticed, because to be noticed was to court disaster. And that's why so many of these stools appear plain. They don't have these intricate designs, they're not covered with figures or patterns. They're just simple, unadorned stools. Because that was the point. If you're a top-tier noble, you don't need to prove yourself. You don't need to show off. You're already established. Your lineage is secure. So you don't need an elaborately carved chair. You need something simple, something understated, something that doesn't draw attention to itself, because that's how you stay safe. That's how you survive in this world. And I'm sure that that's a lesson that we can all learn, no matter what our station in life is, right? Sometimes the smartest move isn't to show off. Sometimes it's to stay low-key. They would have been familiar with the texture of rawhide stretched tight over a wooden frame, the rasp of a grass-woven mat underfoot. But inside the courtyard enclosure, there would be none of those textures. Only wood on wood, everywhere the feel of rich, dark wood, polished until it gleamed like midnight in a moonless sky. This is what they had come to call luxury, a word whose definition shifted when one lived among the Bakongo. For among the Bakongo, carving did not only serve ritual or politics, it became the crown itself, the visible crest of luxury and authority. To be elite was to live surrounded by wood that breathed power. Kings and priests draped themselves in carved symbols, not just as tools of governance, but as ornaments of refinement. In palaces and sacred enclosures, carved figures stood like silent guards, announcing to all who entered, "Here dwells power, here dwells wealth." The very material of wood was imbued with meaning, not merely as a resource, but as a living entity. The tree itself was revered, believed to house spirits that bestowed power and wisdom upon those who sought them out. The art of carving was thus elevated to a high form of magic, where the skillful manipulation of wood could channel spiritual forces and confer blessings upon the community. Every groove, every detail, every figure carried a double weight: artistic beauty and sacred sanction. A carved stool was not simply a seat. It was a throne, lifted by ancestral blessing. A carved staff was not just a walking stick. It was the tongue of authority, speaking louder than its bearer's voice. To dine with carved utensils or to drink from a carved goblet was to perform elite life itself, where even the mundane became ritualized in the language of wood. And the more intimate the object, the greater the intimacy with power. The handle of a door, the post of a window frame, the very comb that tamed unruly hair, each spoke of lineage and legacy, whispered tales of ancestors who had shaped and been shaped by wood. In these spaces, luxury was not a mere aesthetic preference. It was a declaration of identity, a statement of belonging to a lineage that had mastered the art of transforming wood into power. It was an assertion of cultural pride, a celebration of the Bakongo heritage and its profound connection to the natural world. But carving also created distance. These luxuries were not for everyone. The villager who fished the river or tilled the soil might admire the artistry but could not claim its presence in his hut. Carving marked the elite apart, creating a visible frontier between ruler and subject. To possess carved authority was to declare oneself above, chosen, sanctioned, and this exclusivity gave carving its dangerous allure. Walking through a marketplace, one might see an elaborately carved walking stick propped beside a pile of yams, or a stool sporting intricate designs nestled among coils of rope. Yet the very act of displaying these objects in a public space hinted at their owner's wealth. For why else would such treasures be casually placed in a market? They were markers of hidden opulence, signposts indicating that behind a certain type of carving lay something more valuable, something worth guarding jealously. In fact, these displays served as subtle threats, a reminder that the tools of power were not meant to be touched. The thought of possessing such carvings oneself was tempting, perhaps even aspirational, but also instilled a healthy dose of respect and caution. After all, to wield the symbols of authority was not just a privilege, it was a responsibility. It demanded a certain status, a certain decorum, and most importantly, a certain distance from the raw realities of everyday life. It's this paradox that makes carving such a potent symbol in the lives of the Bakongo, a constant negotiation between the desire for beauty and power and the need for restraint and respect. To fully grasp the allure of carving among the Bakongo, we must peel back another layer of meaning. We must understand how carving didn't just adorn their spaces, it performed their rituals. It made the intangible tangible. When the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the courtyard, the air would crackle with anticipation. Rituals unfolded, ceremonies commenced, and carving transformed from mere ornament to active participant. The Bakongo believed that certain carvings possessed spiritual potency. They were not just pieces of art, but conduits to the realm of the ancestors, repositories of communal memory, and most significantly, catalysts for social transformation. During initiation rites, when young men were inducted into adulthood and assumed their roles as hunters or members of secret societies, carving played a pivotal role. Carved masks and figures embodying ancestral spirits served as focal points during trance dances. Their presence believed to infuse the initiates with spiritual power and wisdom. The act of carving itself became a form of communication with the spirit world, a way to invoke ancestral blessings and ensure the well-being of the community. In rituals marking important transitions from birth to death, from harvest to war, carving provided a physical manifestation of the intangible forces at play. The figures and symbols carved on doors, walls, or held in procession represented not just cultural motifs, but living entities capable of influencing the course of events. During times of conflict, for instance, a warrior might set out to battle, accompanied by carved figures representing courage, strength, and victory. Their presence was meant to fortify the warrior's resolve and invoke divine favor on their quest. Even in everyday life, carving permeated rituals as diverse as weddings, funerals, and harvest festivals. During celebrations, carved staffs, mirrors, or goblets became vessels for libations, poured not just as offerings, but as gestures of communion with ancestral spirits. In moments of crisis, they might turn to carved figures for solace, seeking guidance or protection through rituals of petition and prayer. This profound intertwining of carving with the spiritual realm elevated it to a realm beyond aesthetics. It became a tool for navigating the complexities of existence, a bridge between the earthly and the ethereal. In essence, it allowed the Bakongo to express their deep-seated reverence for life in all its phases, to honor their past, to navigate their present, and to anticipate their future. We can almost hear the hushed voices reciting ancient invocations as they stand before these silent witnesses of their faith. The flickering light of the fire dancing in their eyes, the carved figures seem to come alive, their presence filling the sacred space with a sense of continuity and communion. It's a testament to the enduring power of carving, its ability to transform wood into more than just art, into a living, breathing testament to the human spirit. And as the night deepens and the rituals unfold, we are left in awe of the Bakongo people and their profound connection to the world around them. The Bakongo elite weren't just carving wood, they were carving their identity, their connection to the cosmos, and their place within it. Imagine standing in a clearing, the heart of a sacred ceremony. The air is thick with anticipation. Suddenly, a figure emerges from the trees. He moves with a regal bearing, adorned in intricate carvings. His every step echoes with power. As he draws closer, details become clearer. His staff, a marvel of design, spirals upwards, seemingly reaching for the heavens. Every twist and turn telling a story of ancestral lineage and spiritual authority. But it's his mask that truly captures the imagination. Crafted with meticulous detail, it's a masterpiece of both artistry and symbolism. Its sharp angles and imposing features speak of power and majesty. Yet there's a depth to it, a wisdom that transcends mere regality. This is no ordinary man. He is a conduit between the earthly and the divine, a living embodiment of tradition and power. His presence commands respect, but it also inspires a sense of wonder. To witness such artistry in motion is to be reminded of the human capacity for creativity and devotion. It's a spectacle that stirs the soul, leaving one humbled by the sheer magnificence of it all. Carving wasn't just a skill among the Bakongo, it was a rite of passage, a dialogue with the past, a bridge to the spiritual realm, and a powerful tool of self-expression. Each groove and curve was a testament to their unique bond with the natural world and their place within it. As we delve deeper into their culture, we realize that carving wasn't just about aesthetics or utility. It was about weaving together the threads of existence, making sense of the world, and affirming their enduring legacy. As we continue our journey into the world of the Bakongo, one thing becomes clear. Carving wasn't just an art form. It was the heartbeat of their culture, the pulse of their traditions, and the very essence of their connection to the cosmos. The fire has burned low, and the night has grown quiet. We have walked the long road of the Bakongo carver's life, from the sweat and danger of his workshop, to the sacred breath of Nkisi figures, to the mysteries whispered in wood grain, and finally to the halls of kings, where carving itself became a crown. What began as the rough strike of a chisel on hardwood unfolded into something greater, a sacred calling where every cut was a prayer. every line a negotiation with spirits, and every finished work a mirror of power. To carve among the Bakongo was never safe. It was to step daily into danger, whether from ritual poison, spiritual backlash, or the eyes of rulers demanding perfection. Yet it was also a path into eternity. Wood shaped not just into objects, but into living vessels of memory and command. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. And so, when you next see an African carving, whether a stool, a mask, or an Nkisi figure bristling with iron nails, remember the cost. Remember the hands that labored, the rituals whispered, the spirits invoked, and the power it carried into the world. These were not decorations. They were living companions, guardians, and crowns. The Bakongo understood that power is never silent. Even when carved in wood, it speaks. The grain tells stories, the grooves carry prayers, and the polished surface reflects both human ambition and divine authority. Carving was not only craft, it was danger. It was survival, and it was the crown upon which authority rested. And now, as the night deepens and the fire fades, let us close our eyes with the wisdom of their story. May your rest be calm, and may the spirits of wood and river guard your dreams. We started this journey with the Cuba, renowned for their intricate and elegant courtly art. Each piece reflecting a cosmology where the king's power flowed from the center of the world. The legendary Budi, where the Cuba kingdom was born. Through the Cuba, we learned that art wasn't just about beauty. It was about order, about imposing the king's will onto the world through design. It was about saying, "This is how it is," and making it so. Then we turned towards the Congo, whose masks were not just about representing spirits, they were about containing them, about giving form to the formless. To channel the dangerous energy of the Nkasi, every scarification line, every nail driven in, was a way of binding power, of forcing the spirit to stay within the confines of wood and cloth. As we moved further into the Congo rainforest, we encountered the Sanji, whose Nkisi figures were less about kingship and more about community, about harnessing the power of the forest itself. These were figures that embodied the wisdom of the elders, the strength of the hunters, and the fertility of the earth. They were not just carvings, they were living embodiments of their culture's core. From there, we followed the mighty Zambezi to the Luba, whose ties to the land were undeniable. Their sculptures were not just works of art, they were land claims, declarations of ownership over the natural world. Every curve and contour was a way of defining and defending their domain. Finally, we returned to the Bakongo, whose mastery of wood was almost supernatural. Their carvings weren't just beautiful, they were powerful, imbued with the spirits of their creators and the strength of their ancestors. In their hands, wood became flesh, vessels carrying the weight of tradition and the hope for the future. This journey through the Congo rainforest has been one of power, of shaping not just wood, but destinies. It's been a lesson in how art can be more than aesthetics, how it can be a tool for kings and communities, for imposing order and for channeling chaos. If you found this educational, please share it with others who might also find value in such knowledge. Your support helps keep this content free for everyone. You are now under baobab skies.